What knowledge might save your life one day? Don't ever stop performing CPR on a person until the EMTs take their body away. CPR doesn't wake up a person. It's to force blood to their brain to prevent brain death so that the EMTs can revive that person. And find a CPR buddy to switch with regularly. Even if they don't know CPR, coach them through it, but if at all possible don't do it alone. Why? Because it is super taxing and your arms will get tired and hurt really fast. And as said, you can't stop. Polar bears have insane ADHD. If one is chasing you, intermittently drop clothing items like a hat or gloves. It will stop to sniff them. Normal prey animals don't shed whole pieces of themselves. The bear will be perplexed. Saw on Reddit somewhere else. If it's brown, lie down. If it's black, fight back. Edited, thanks you Thorscope. If it's white, good night. Seriously, brother-in-law was up in the Arctic. They are scary creatures. From the minute they see you, out in the open, they see you as meat. The human version of the gecko tail trick. Very clever. If you sweat you die. Because the sweat will freeze in your clothing, which will induce hypothermia much faster. And since you can't get them dry, you're basically fucked. I mean it's either you last naked and exposed and get hypothermia or the iced clothes rapidly kill you. If someone threatens you with a gun or something and they want to move you to another location, your chance of dying goes up considerably if you agree to relocate. My father was an assistant DA who worked with homicide. He gave me this advice over and over. Years later, someone climbed in my car and threatens me with a gun. And I said no. Took the keys out and threw them. It wasn't a conscious decision. My dad had just hammered his advice in so hard that it switched on. The guy gets out without saying a word and runs. Edit. Let's be clear, what I did was very stupid. While you should never allow yourself to be relocated, aggravating an armed assailant rarely goes well. I was very lucky he didn't kill me. Criminals who commit reckless crimes like this are rarely rational, and many end up in jail over shooting someone over nothing. They don't always act in their own self-interests. Drugs are also often involved. I should have handed over my wallet and keys, not throwing them. After telling my dad what happened, he was angrier than I've ever seen him. Never agree to be taken to another location, and never try to agitate your attacker. Give him your wallet and keys, and refuse to go along. You've gotta throw them off their rhythm. A friend was carjacked, guy told her to start driving, so she did. Right into a cement pillar. Airbag hit the jacker and broke his arm. She ran into the store while he was disoriented. Kept hitting lock button on her key fob to keep him in the car until the cops showed up. Gun wasn't even loaded. Insurance elected to raise on her because of the accident, though, so that may not be the best way to handle it. I work in law enforcement. If someone is forcing you into their vehicle, fight for your life and make as much noise as possible. Consider it a death sentence. Firefighter training. If there is a fire, crawl out of the building. Do not stand up to run. 1 or 2 breaths of smoke are enough to do major damage and require hospitalization, if you get out at all. It may be warm where you are crawling, but standing up can cook your skin and your lungs. The smoke at eye level can be more than 600 degrees Celsius, 1200 degrees Fahrenheit. If you can't see and don't know the room layout, crawl with your legs in front of you, sliding on your ass. Do not crawl face first, or you may take a dive down the staircase in the confusion. This reminds me. If you're caught in a river, while tubing, rafting, etc., you may be tempted to doggy paddle to save energy. But you want to turn your body as best you can to float on your back, so your feet are in the direction of the current. Your feet, loose legs, do not lock your knees, will take the impact of any submerged rocks, etc. And you can push away from them rather than getting a head or chest injury. If you're being pulled out to sea by a current, swim parallel to the shore while letting yourself be carried out until you're out of its grip, rather than waste your energy fighting against it. Also, thanks to a current UK SAR, don't thrash in cold water as your gasping reflex will drown you. Instead, attempt to float until the reflex passes, then you can address the situation. The instinct of wolves will only cause them to attack hunt you if they can intimidate you into fleeing from them. Standing your ground against a wolf pack will be terrifying, but will eventually cause them to bugger off. Tigers as well. Don't turn your eyes away from a tiger. There is a story of a boy that had to walk backwards for 3 hours back to his village being stalked by a tiger. The cost benefit of a prey animal even slightly hurting a tiger is not worth it. It could mean a death sentence in the wild. If a canker sore in your mouth or on your tongue isn't healing in about 2 weeks, it might not be a canker sore. I'm going into surgery today, and they will likely remove 100% of my oral cancer because of early detection. Good luck today. Sorry for being dumb, but what's a canker sore? I remember reading in a Reddit post similar to this, that if you can't do a pull-up you probably won't have the strength to pull yourself up off a ledge, and that has stuck with me ever since. In theory it's very true. But I would guess most people could if some serious adrenaline is involved. If you're unsure about the movement of a tornado, put a straight object such as a tree or a street light in between you and the tornado. It'll make it way easier to see which way the tornado is moving. If the tornado appears to not be moving, it's coming right at you. Edit. Usually the only reference you will have is the width. If it doesn't appear to be moving but is getting wider, it's coming towards you. At which point you want to move perpendicular to its movement. Thank you start button for clearing that up. In my experience the easiest way to check if the tornado is getting wider is using an object such as a light post, but if you can eyeball it, more power to you. This is the stuff that makes the hairs in the back of my neck stand up. I have never seen a tornado, but Jesus fug, the thought of one coming straight at me is just so awesome and creepy. Or directly away from you. Either way, that's not a bet you wanna take when your prize is being able to just kinda sit here. If someone gets stabbed, do not take the knife out if possible. If it stays in, it acts as a plug to the hole and will reduce blood loss. Apply pressure around the wound as best as you can and call an ambulance. And if you get stabbed and the attacker withdraws the knife, seal off the wound with a credit card, especially if it's to the lung. Edit. I'm on my way out of the country and turned on my phone to find that this is putting people's lives in danger. By seal off the wound I meant create suction by putting the card flat on the wound. Don't just jam it in there and dig around. I saw this in an instructional video for police like a year ago. What won't kill you in Australia? The wildlife. What will kill you? Getting lost in the outback. If you're lost and out of fuel, stay with your vehicle. Move as little as possible during the day and stay in the shade. Conserve water. Rip off wing mirrors to shine at any search planes. You can drink your urine approx 1-3 times before your kidneys start to pack it in. This is absolute last resort. To be fair, the wildlife can also kill you. I read this possibly on another thread or even on this one. If you smell something close to fish or even urine, it's possible you may have an electrical fire. Electrical fires tend to smell like fish and, when exposed to high heat, urine. Or maybe your cat had a snack and decided to pee on the carpet. And if you smell rotten eggs, it's natural gas. Get out immediately and call 911. All snakes in Victoria, Australia are venomous. Just assume all snakes are venomous and stay away. Edit. 1 letter. If the tide suddenly goes out unexpectedly, run like you stole it, for higher ground. I read about a 10-year-old English girl who had just learned this before going on vacation with her family to Thailand. Then the big tsunami that killed a few 100,000 came. She saw the water retreat and the other tourists walk out on the exposed seafloor. She freaked out and convinced everybody to run for higher ground. A lot of people were saved by a little girl who had paid attention in school. They later brought a lot of flowers to the teacher. If you're being choked, turning your head to the right or left will allow you to breathe. Go for the eyes. Edit. I in this thread is some of the best advice on how to break from an attacker attempting to choke you. Really makes me want to get back into martial arts. Edit. I courtesy you Micabra93. Your first step is always to tuck your chin to your chest before they can even sink in a choke. Doesn't matter if it's a rear naked choke. Think most chokes you see in MMA action movies from behind, or a rape choke, 2 hands on your neck from the front. You also have to realize that chokes are fucking dangerous. Not quite as dangerous as the movies, where a person gets choked out in 3 seconds and dies, but still can cause lasting, permanent damage. There are 2 types of chokes, blood chokes and wind chokes. Blood chokes, like a rear naked choke, prevent oxygenated blood from getting to your brain, usually by compressing the arteries on the sides of your neck, the carotids. After 6-8 seconds, your brain notes the fuck out, sends out SOS signals to your spinal cord, and you go unconscious. It's your brain's way of protecting itself and your heart. If you release immediately, the person will regain consciousness in 3-4 seconds as blood makes its way back to the brain. Now, and this is fucking important, if you hold that choke longer than 10-15 seconds, you are inflicting permanent, potentially irreversible brain damage. Longer than that, you seriously risk killing a person. Do not fuck around with your buddies when you're wrestling. You will kill someone. It can be hard to tell when someone goes unconscious if you don't know what you're looking for, as with blood chokes their eyes usually stay open and the process is painless for the person getting choked. Wind chokes, unlike blood chokes, are much more painful and take longer to be effective. They ultimately accomplish the same goal, preventing oxygen to the brain, but do so by cutting off your ability to get air into your lungs. This is very painful, and takes much longer, 30-45 seconds. There's a truth to what everyone is saying here. If anyone ever tries to choke you with intent outside of a martial arts school, go feral. Claw, eye gouge, bite, and do not go quietly. But the only thing that will truly save you in this situation is being prepared. Furthermore, moaning yes daddy and winking at the attacker may give you the brief moment of confusion and shock you'll need to make that strike for the eyes. Regardless of breathing, most idiots that will try to strangle you won't first secure you. If your hands are free, stab the fuck out of their eyes, and if your feet are free, groin area. Do it quick before they attempt to lock you into a restrained position. Headlocks and strangling, unless done properly, leave the attacker pretty vulnerable too. A general rule of thumb: if you are being attacked in any way and can't see a peaceful way out via compliance or whatever, go rabid. Bite, scratch, whatever. Planck's constant is 6.62607015 x 10-34 Js. Suzy, that you? That water you're about to dive into might not be as deep as you think. Always just step in and swim down to check for depth. Then jump. If you've been carjacked and the carjacker tells you to just drive, take whatever chance you get to wreck. At minimum, you're getting emergency services involved, meaning it's more likely they'll be caught, and there's a chance you'll incapacitate or even kill the carjacker. Of course, there's also a chance that you might not survive, but if they're taking you to a second location, odds are you weren't going to come back anyway. You don't even need to wreck. I doubt carjackers put on their seat belts, and if they do, just push the release button before you up the speed, jam the brakes, and watch that motherfucker fly through the windscreen. In Australia, you can always make calls to 000 regardless of whether you have signal credit. Your mobile will use any available network to connect you. Edit. You will also connect to emergency services if you ring 911/999. Edit 2. I did not include all countries as I was not completely sure if it does work in all countries. And those people saying about the outback, yes, your mobile won't work out there at all because there is fuck all out there. If you are going to the outback, please make sure you are adequately prepared for an emergency, because even if by some miracle your call gets through, it would be hours before emergency services could get to you. In the US, this is also true of 911. If you are able to connect to any cell tower or Wi-Fi network from your phone, it doesn't matter if the phone even has a SIM, you're supposed to be able to contact 911. A friend who grew up in a rough neighborhood taught me this one. If you're on a bus and robbers get on, you have a chance of not having your stuff taken or being bothered at all if you pretend to be asleep. For all that it's scary for the passengers when 1 or 2 fuckers with guns climb on a bus, it's also stressful AF for the robbers. They have to keep their eyes on a lot of people at once to prevent anyone from calling the police, prevent the driver from signaling distress somehow, and prevent all passengers from reacting in dangerous ways. If you're asleep, that's one person less for a robber to manage, so they may not bother to wake you up and have another wild card to deal with, just to get your phone and wallet. If the robbers get on and every single passenger is asleep, they may decide not to bother at all, depending on how widely the bus driver is grinning at them and how warmly it welcomes them into its domain. Contrary to common myth, you can file a missing persons report before 24 hours have passed. Putting it off a day because they went missing that night could very easily be the difference between them being found or not. Bears can climb trees, but have trouble running down hills as they gain too much speed. If you're being chased by a bear, head for a hill rather than up a tree. Or, better yet, know the signs of a bear and have bear spray you, like wandering around where there are bears. It's advised that outdoorsmen wear noisy little bells on their clothing so as not to startle the bears that aren't expecting them. Also to carry pepper spray with them in case of an encounter with a bear. It is also a good idea to watch out for fresh signs of bear activity. Outdoorsmen should recognize the difference between black bear and grizzly bear poop. Black bear poop is smaller and contains a lot of berry seeds and squirrel fur. Grizzly bear poop has little bells in it and smells like pepper spray. If you're being followed, quickly try and hug someone nearby and whisper in their ear the situation quickly. Most people will just pretend to know you to keep you safe. Let it go. Don't let road rage influence your behavior. It's not worth it. Take a deep breath, count to 10. Take your foot off the pedal. Disengage. It's not worth it. If you're alone and start choking with nobody around to give you the Heimlich, you can give yourself the Heimlich by using the back of a chair, or similar objects like the side arm of a couch or whatever. Forcefully throw your stomach over the back of the chair a few times, try to mimic the motion of the Heimlich, push in above the belly button, then up. Kind of like a J motion. I always try to remember this, but anytime I think I'm slightly choked this logic goes out the window. Don't drive behind a truck with an open back that is carrying materials, egg metal rods, logs, bricks etc. They can come loose and fly back at great speed, impaling the driver or inhabitant of the vehicle behind the truck. Edit. Since many are asking for a link to that brick video, here it is. No blood or gore, but it is highly disturbing to watch nonetheless. Skip to 145. Edit. NSFL, especially the audio. Edit 2. The replies brought me to the conclusion that it would be best everyone avoid that video. Therefore I have removed the link. The old Final Destination life tip. Swimming. No, seriously, if you live in a country with lots of rivers, lakes and bridges, swimming is rather important. Lock all your doors when you're in the house. No neighborhood is 100% safe. No kidding. I work a night shift and was up at 3 AM watching TV. So all the lights in the living room were on. This is like a beacon for people looking to rob houses, as they think the owners left the lights on to go on vacation. Had some guy knock on my front door to see if anyone was home before he busted in. I then heard the handle jiggle. Needless to say, he was quite surprised when I responded along with 3 Great Danes. More than he bargained for, and he tried to play it off as he needed a ride into town. I live in a rural area and there isn't a neighbor within a quarter mile of me, let alone any sort of business. Wife called the cops, but he disappeared before they got there. I'd say the survival rule of 3 humans can survive 3 weeks without food, 3 days without water, 3 hours without shelter, and 3 minutes without oxygen. Helps get your priorities straight should it come to it. 3 hours without shelter? That doesn't sound right. If you're caught in an avalanche and buried under snow, spit to see in which direction you need to dig so you don't go the wrong way. This is not really a good tip. If you are buried in an avalanche, the snow will compact so much that you won't be able to move once it stops avalanching. What you want to do, when you feel it slow down, is hold your arms before your face to create a pocket of air to breathe, so when the avalanche stops, and if you're not dead, you can still breathe. Edit. For more information, the problem with the spit idea is that it's intended to tell you which direction to dig, but you won't be digging, unless you get lucky and the avalanche pushes you up to the surface. There can be tons of snow compacted above you, and once it stops moving, you won't be moving. So, avalanche tips, never outrun it. Even a wet snow avalanche, which are slower, move pretty damned fast, 30 mph. Run, or ski, perpendicular to the avalanche, that is across the avalanche, to try to get out of the avalanche zone. If you are caught in one, try to swim or thrash to stay afloat as high up as possible. Once the movement slows down and you're still underneath, try to form a bubble around your face, which gives you more breathing space. Then, stay calm. Edit. Some clarity. Never, ever go to the second location. I'm sure other people have said something similar to this already, but this is really important. If you get taken to the second location, your chances of making it out alive reduces to almost zero. If someone tries to kidnap you, do whatever you can to get them off you. Scream, kick, whatever. Your aim is to knock them out, hell, to kill them. The more of a fight you put up and the longer you stall, the more likely it is they will give up and leave. If you do get taken, make a trail. If you can, drop small items like a watch or earring periodically, and if you are in a vehicle, spit around the place, pull out pieces of your hair, wipe your blood on stuff. Basically put down as much DNA as you can. Pee on the car seat, hell, even sweat has traces of DNA in it. If you can, drop small easily missed things like your ID, a pair of glasses you're known to wear, a sock, some jewelry, even your purse or wallet, under the car seats. It's not as likely the kidnapper will think to look there, but you best believe the crime scene techs will. Maybe not your life, but everyone should have basic first aid CPR training if possible. My dad collapsed on Saturday morning when he got up to go to the toilet and neither me or my mum know basic first aid or CPR. The ambulance took 8 minutes to arrive and we only live 4 streets away from the depot. Luckily he came to, but there was a point where he stopped breathing. If he continued to not breathe 8 minutes would be too late. Please learn and hope you don't need it, instead of needing it and not knowing. The last time this was asked I actually read something that later, at the very least, saved my ass. Don't try to put out a grease fire with water. You must smother it. Always question yourself, especially under the influence. Platypuses have venomous spurs on their legs. Married a woman like that one time. If you have to get out of a moving car then put one foot down and take a step, don't just jump out. This will reduce your speed immensely. Sure you will fall over but at a much reduced speed. A stuntman told me this. I had to leave a moving car that was going about 40 miles per hour. I was pregnant. I had a medium-sized purse and a pillow. The man driving the car had said he was going to kill us both if he couldn't have me and was going in and out of oncoming traffic. I grabbed my bag and pillow and held the pillow across my stomach and opened the door and thought if I go like a rag doll except my arm holding my stomach and my other arm with my purse covered my face, but everything else I tried to relax. I stepped out and let myself fall and roll. It was amazing. I ended up with just a handful of bruises and scrapes and I was fine. And my daughter is 14 now. We made it. Edit. Obligatory thanks for the gold. If you're taking blood thinners, you should know they increase the risks of bleeding. You should watch out for signs of bleeding like pallor, breathlessness, multiple rash, bleeding gums or nose, red urine. If you accidentally cut yourself, take great care of the cut. You could bleed out if you don't. At the pharmacy today a regular patient died because she got a cut on her leg while gardening, but didn't think much about it. But because she was on blood thinners, she bled out during the night. If you're ever charged by a moose, get behind a tree. They have about a 10-inch blind spot and they'll lose you. If you notice a lack of small creatures or woodlands animals nearby, most fear human interaction but you'll know they're there. But if it is noticeably empty, then you're likely in a predator kill zone. Similarly, if you see a lot of vultures circling, it can mean dead animal or predator animal cache. So be aware of this when you're in the outdoors. If a snake bites you and locks its jaw, run its head under cold water. If you whip a snake like a towel, assuming it's done correctly it breaks the snake's neck, killing it. To get a dog to detach after locking its jaw, stick your finger up its butt. Also works in a situation where you can't dislodge two people. A quick ball fondle will separate them. Edit. I'm told that the finger up the butt does not work on dogs and a hose in the face or mouth is more effective. Edit 2. My most upvoted thing on Reddit is about fingering dogs and ball fondling. Sounds about right. If a power line falls down on the ground near you, it's safer to get away on only one foot. to avoid a high voltage difference between your feet. The headrest in a car is made to come off and break the windshield in case of submersion. If you are in the wild and stumble upon a big heap of food and drink, don't consume it in one go very quickly because it could seriously shock your inside. 911 dispatcher here. If someone is missing, overdue or otherwise isn't where they should be or not answering their phone or texts, there is absolutely no requirement to wait 24 hours to report. This is a myth perpetuated by movies and TV. While I can't tell you exactly when you should call, here are some good rules of thumb. For children under 12 years old, call as soon as you believe they are missing. Don't mess around, minutes can count with kids. If you absolutely must, you can check the obvious areas or known hiding places prior to calling. You will not get in trouble for calling 911 or emergency services even if you locate the kid before anyone is on scene. Missing children are taken very seriously and we'd rather you call early and find them before we have a chance to help than for you to call later and lower the chance of finding them. For everyone else, it depends. Again, these are some things to think about and not set in stone, so a good rule of thumb is, if you're unsure if you should call, just call. But things to think about. Are they answering their cell phone or responding to texts? Do they have a serious medical condition and do you know if they have their medication? Are they suicidal or have been in the past? Are they able to care for themselves? Do they have some form of dementia or some other mental issues that cause them to be confused, hallucinate, etc? Some examples. If your wife texted you 30 minutes ago saying she'll be home in 20 minutes, she has no mitigating factors, healthy, not suicidal, etc. Maybe wait a little bit, even if she's not answering the phone. Phone could be dead and she decided to pick up dinner or run an errand before coming home. While I can't tell you exactly when it would be appropriate to call in this situation, use your best judgment. Even calling early in this situation, you won't get in trouble. But it likely won't be a high priority call either. Your elderly grandfather who has early stages of Alzheimer's, who is diabetic and requires regular doses of medication isn't at his home. His keys, wallet, and medication are all at home. Call immediately, don't hesitate. Those are two extremes. TLDR, don't wait 24 hours to report a missing person. Kids and the elderly, call as soon as you believe they're missing. Everyone else, call earlier rather than later, but use your judgment based on the circumstances. Edit, I'm going to be that person, sorry. Thank you kind person for my first gold. In commemoration, I'm going to give another important, potentially life-saving tip when calling 911, or whatever your location's emergency services number is. The most important piece of information you can give your 911 dispatcher is your location. With nothing more than a location, I can get someone started to you, even if I don't know anything else about the situation. Not only that, giving a location early can save both of us valuable time if you connected to the incorrect jurisdiction. Do not rely on your phone giving your dispatcher good location information. We deal with something called a confidence or uncertainty factor when dealing with location for mobile phones. That factor is measured in meters and represents a circle with a radius of that distance from a point that we are given. You are calling from somewhere in that circle. Sometimes we get an uncertainty factor of 3 or 4 meters which will tell us basically where you are. More commonly, it's in the tens of meters or higher. Try to give us the best location information you can. An address with apartment or space number is best. Cross streets will work well for anything on or near the streets, or if you don't know the address, you could say it's the Walgreens at XY cross streets. Please don't say it happened on Pine Street. Streets are usually long and that is still a large area. In addition, if it's a small residential street, many computer-aided dispatch CAD systems aren't designed to work with just a street name, so just having the one small street will not help us locate you. Lastly, we are all aware of and trained to deal with the situation of not knowing where you are. There are a variety of reasons you might not know where you are. The only thing I can tell you here is get as much information about where you are as you can. A piece of mail, a street sign, a landmark. I can't possibly detail every possible scenario, but we can and will work with whatever we can. Too often someone will be calling for a real emergency and they tell me what's going on, tell me to get help, but don't tell me where they are. We need to know where you are. We will use whatever we can to determine where an emergency is occurring, but telling us where you are is the quickest way to get help started your way. Better to drink water consistently throughout the day than drinking when thirsty. Army boot camp taught me this. Never dig straight down.